The alien space station floated like a giant shadow above the burning star. Its metal rings moved slowly, glowing with silver lights. Thousands of ships came and left every day, but only the chosen were allowed inside. It was not a place for humans, not anymore. The station was guarded by strict alien officers, tall, armored, and silent. Among them stood Officer Rydek. Known for his sharp eyes and harder heart, Rydek's duty was simple. He was the gatekeeper. No one could pass without his permission. He followed rules with no mercy. To him, rules were not just laws. They were the shield of order. He had refused many before, and he would refuse again. Without hesitation, that day, as the giant gates opened to let a convoy pass, a small shuttle appeared. It was old, human-made, weak compared to the shining alien crafts. The shuttle shook as it tried to stay in position, like a bird fighting. The wind. Rydek narrowed his eyes as the ship requested entry. When the screen lit up, he saw her, a human woman, young but tired, her face pale and her eyes burning with fear. "Please let me in," she said, her voice trembling but brave. "My colony is gone, destroyed. I have nowhere else to go." The officer's answer was cold. "Humans are forbidden here. Leave, before I force your ship away." But she did not leave. Her hands tightened on the console, her lips pressed together. She looked like someone who had lost everything but still refused to fall. She whispered almost to herself, "There must be mercy somewhere." The space around them was silent. The star glowed in the distance like a dying fire. Inside the station, hundreds of lives moved safely under alien order. Outside, she was alone. One fragile human ship against the vast emptiness. Rydek felt a strange pull inside him, but he pushed it away. His mind told him what he always believed. Mercy weakens, rules protect. He repeated the words that were written in the officer's code. "Humans bring danger, humans bring chaos, the gate must stay closed." The woman tried again, her voice breaking. "You don't understand. I saw the colony burn. My family, my people, all gone." She leaned closer to the screen, her eyes wide. "Please, I am the last one left. I just need safety, even for a short time." But Rydek did not move. His hand hovered over the control that would push her shuttle back. He had no hate for her, but he had no mercy to give either. To him, she was just another rule, another order to follow. For a long moment, they stared at each other across the cold screen. One was a soldier of the law, the other a survivor of tragedy. Both stood firm, neither moving. The silence became heavy, as if the stars themselves were listening. At last, Rydek spoke again. "Leave now, human, before your weakness cost you even more." Her shoulders sank, and her eyes filled with pain, but she nodded slowly, as if she had expected nothing else. The screen went dark, and the shuttle drifted away from the gates. Rydek turned away, but the image of her face stayed in his mind. He told himself it was nothing, just another human, just another beggar of mercy. Yet his heart felt heavier than before. Behind him, the massive doors of the station closed with a deep echo. The human was gone, floating in the dark. The rules had been followed. The law was safe, but fate was not finished with them yet. Something unseen was moving in the shadows of space, and soon, the officer who refused a human would face the choice of his life. The small human shuttle drifted in the endless dark. Its weak engines hummed softly, trying to keep the craft steady. Inside, the woman sat alone, her hands trembling as she held the controls. Her name was Arya, though to the alien officer she was only human, nothing more. Her face was pale, her eyes red, but her spirit had not broken. She whispered to herself, "I cannot give up. Not yet." Her mind returned again and again to the face of the alien officer. Cold eyes, firm voice, no mercy. He had turned her away like she was nothing, yet something in his hesitation, in the silence between his words, told her he had felt a spark of doubt. It was small, but it was there, and Arya knew doubt was a door, even if it was locked. She sent another signal, weak and crackling through static. The alien station ignored her, its massive gates glowing. Like silver fire still, she spoke to the emptiness, hoping anyone would hear. "My name is Arya," she said, her voice breaking. "My world is gone. My people are dead. I carry no weapons, only memories." She pressed her forehead against the console, whispering again, "Please, someone must hear me." Inside the station, Officer Redek sat at his post. He heard the faint signal, but did not respond. His orders were clear and his duty was law, but the voice reached into him like a quiet blade. He remembered her eyes, not weak, not angry, but full of desperate hope. It was the kind of hope that made even the strongest rules feel fragile. Other officers passed by, not caring, not even noticing. To them, humans were forgotten creatures of the past. Once long ago, they had caused chaos across the stars. Now they were scattered, hunted, and erased from memory. Rydick reminded himself of this history. He whispered the code under his breath. Humans bring danger, humans bring chaos. The gate must stay closed. But the words no longer felt sharp. They felt heavy like chains. He turned his eyes to the dark screen where her shuttle floated. He saw it drifting, powerless against the void. She was small, fragile, yet she refused to vanish. And Redek wondered, for the first time in years, if the code was truly right. Meanwhile, Arya's fuel reserves dropped lower and lower. She checked the meter and bit her lip. Soon she would have no power left to even send a signal. Her shuttle would become a silent coffin. Lost in the endless night, fear crept into her heart, but she fought it with memory. She thought of her colony. Green fields, warm skies, laughter of children. Now all burned, destroyed by fire she could not stop. She told herself, "If I die, at least someone must know we lived, even for a short time." She opened her storage box and pulled out a small data crystal. It glowed faint blue in her hands. This was her last treasure, her last proof of her people. Inside it were names, voices, songs, and history. Everything her world had been captured in a single shard. She looked at it and whispered, "I must protect this, even if I cannot protect myself." Back at the gate, Redek watched silently. He saw the shuttle flicker as power failed. He should have felt nothing, but his chest tightened. For the first time, the strict officer felt powerless. He thought, if she dies here, her story ends in silence and no one will ever know. Something deep inside him shifted, like a door he had kept closed for too long. Arya's voice came once more, faint and breaking. "Please, if anyone hears me, don't let me fade into nothing." Her words carried no anger, no demand, only sorrow. It was not the voice of an enemy, but the voice of someone who only wanted to live. The silence after her call felt endless. Even the stars outside seemed to wait for an answer. Rydick did not move, but inside a storm had begun. He had sworn loyalty to the code, but now the code felt like a cage. He told himself again, mercy weakens, yet his heart whispered, mercy saves. He turned his head away, but he could not escape her voice, and though he did not know it yet, fate was already weaving their lives together. A plea had been spoken, and its echo would soon return in fire and blood. The space beyond the station was wide and silent, but silence in space often hid danger. Redek had stood guard for years, and he had learned to feel when something was wrong. That night, as the star flickered weakly in the distance, he felt it again, a weight in the air, a shadow pressing from the unseen. The human woman's shuttle still drifted nearby, her weak signal fading with every minute. She had fallen quiet, too tired to beg anymore, but her presence lingered like a whisper, always in the corner of Rydek's mind. He told himself she was nothing, just a distraction. Yet the silence around her seemed louder than the hum of the station itself. Then came the first sign, a flicker on the radar, faint and quick, gone before it could be locked. Redek frowned, leaning closer, his sharp eyes narrowing. Movement in the dark, he whispered to himself, but when he scanned again, the space was empty. Only the stars stared back, cold and ancient. He reported nothing, because nothing was confirmed, yet his instincts whispered of danger, and instincts were something he had learned never to ignore. He tightened his grip on the console, watching the black screen. It was too quiet. Far too quiet. Out beyond the gate, Arya stirred inside her failing shuttle. Her head lifted as if she had heard something, though space carried no sound. Her heartbeat quickened for no reason she could name. Her eyes searched the window, staring into the endless dark, and then she saw it, a shape moving, slow and low, as if stalking. At first, she thought it was her mind, tired and broken, playing tricks. But then another shadow joined it, and then another. Her breath caught in her throat. These were not stars, not rocks, not illusions. These were ships, sleek and black, sliding like predators through the void. Fear rose in her chest, but so did a strange clarity. She reached for the console and sent another signal, her voice sharp with urgency. "This is Arya. Unknown vessels in approach, I repeat, unknown vessels in approach." Her voice shook, but she forced herself to stay calm. She knew if she panicked, no one would listen. Inside the station, Redex. Console blinked with her signal. He almost ignored it, but then his own radar flared again. This time the movement stayed, sharp and clear. Not one, not two, but a cluster of ships creeping closer. His jaw tightened, and his hand moved fast. He opened the wider scans, and the shadows lit up like knives against the stars. Pirates, he thought, cold spreading through him. Not simple raiders, but the kind that preyed on the weak and desperate. They killed for fuel, for food, for amusement, and now their eyes had found the weakest prey of all, a human woman alone in a dying shuttle. Redek clenched his fists, his heart heavy. His orders were clear. Humans were forbidden, and her fate was not his concern. But the pirates were moving closer, their engines glowing faint red like hungry eyes. If he stayed silent, she would not last more than minutes. Her shuttle was too weak, too fragile. It would be torn apart before she could even scream. Inside her ship, Arya watched the shadows grow larger. Her breath came fast, her hands shaking, but she refused to give in to fear. She pressed the signal again, calling not just the station, but the void itself. "Please, someone hear me, they are coming, they will destroy me." Her words cracked, but she forced them out. "I don't want to die in silence." On the station, alarms whispered quietly in the background. Other officers noticed the movement but dismissed it. To them, one human life was nothing compared to the vast machine of the station. But Rydek did not dismiss it. His eyes locked on her small shuttle, floating like a candle in a storm, and for the first time, he felt the rules tearing against his heart. The shadows grew sharper, the pirate ships opening their wings. Their weapons glowed faintly, hungry for blood. Rydek knew what would happen next. He had seen it before. They would not simply destroy. They would play. They would tear her apart slowly just to hear her cry. Something inside him snapped. A storm he could not control. The rules said to turn away, but his spirit screamed to act, he told himself. She is human, forbidden, weak. But another voice inside whispered louder. She is alone, and you are the only one who can save her. And so, as the shadows in the dark drew closer to their prey, Rydek's choice began to burn inside him. The law chained his hands, but fate had already placed the key in his heart. Soon the gates of silence would open, and the war between duty and mercy would begin. The pirate ships broke from the shadows like wolves in the night. Their engines roared, their dark hulls glowing red as they armed their weapons. They circled the small human shuttle, tightening their net with cruel patience. Arya's eyes widened as beams of light scanned across her fragile craft. Her shuttle shook, alarm screaming, power dropping, she whispered. "Not like this, please, not like this." Inside the alien station, Rydek stood frozen. The console flashed warnings, signals of attack. But no one moved. Other officers watched with cold indifference. "To waste weapons on a human," one muttered. "It is not worth it." Rydek's fists clenched until his claws dug into his own palms. He had sworn loyalty to the code, but now he watched a life about to be crushed. And his heart burned. With fire, the pirates fired their first shot. A beam tore through the black, striking Arya's shuttle across the side. Metal screamed, sparks flew, her ship spun wildly before she regained control. She gasped, her hands tight on the wheel. "I won't give them my fear," she whispered. "I will not scream." Ridek's body moved before his mind could stop him. He slammed the override, pulling his personal fighter into launch sequence. Unauthorized, the system warned. He ignored it, his blood racing, the hangar opened, and his sleek craft shot into the dark like a silver arrow. He knew what this meant: disobedience, punishment, exile. But none of it mattered, not while the woman still lived. The pirates noticed him immediately. One sneered over the comms, their voice full of mockery. "An officer alone? You bring yourself to the feast?" Their laughter echoed like knives. They turned their weapons toward him, leaving Arya's shuttle trembling in the shadows. Ridek answered with fire. His fighter spun fast, weapons blazing, cutting through the black with deadly light. One pirate. Ship exploded in a flash, breaking into shards. The others spread out, circling, hungry but cautious now. The fight had begun, and it was no longer only about prey. It was about pride. Arya clung to her seat as her shuttle shook from the shockwaves. She watched in awe, her breath held tight. The same officer who had turned her away was now risking everything to protect her. Why, she did not know. But in that moment, he was no longer just an alien officer. He was her only shield against the dark. The battle grew fierce. Ridek weaved through the void like a dancer of war. Beams of light streaked across the emptiness, explosions blooming like cruel stars. Every move he made was sharp, precise, but the enemy was many. One ship clipped his wing, sparks trailing as his fighter shook. He growled, forcing the craft steady, refusing to fall. The pirates struck again, two at once. Ridek spun, firing in both directions. One fell in flames, but the other struck hard against his shields. The alarm screamed, but he pushed forward, his eyes blazing. He thought only of the shuttle behind him. He thought only of the fragile voice that had begged not to die in silence. Arya gripped her console, tears stinging her eyes. She whispered, "Fight, please fight. Don't leave me here." Her shuttle flickered with failing power, her systems breaking one by one, but her eyes stayed locked on his fighter, a silver spark against the night for the first time since her world burned. She felt hope. It was small, but it was alive. The pirates gathered for a final strike. They charged as one, weapons glowing, fury burning in their engines. Ridek pulled every last drop of power into his craft. His voice growled low and fierce. "If I must fall, I fall with purpose." He dove straight into the heart of the storm. The clash was thunder and silence. Beams tore across the dark. Ships collided. Fire lit the void. One by one, the pirates fell to his fury, but every strike tore at his fighter, too, breaking it piece by piece. Finally, the last ship exploded in a burst of fire, scattering across the stars. Silence returned, but it was heavy, filled with smoke and broken light. Ridek's fighter spun, damaged, systems failing. He gasped for breath, his vision blurred, but his eyes searched until they found the shuttle. It was still there, broken but alive. The woman had survived because he had chosen to break the rules. And in that moment, he knew there was no turning back. The silence after the battle was heavy. The wreckage of pirate ships drifted through the void like burning ghosts. Flames flickered and died in the darkness, leaving only shattered metal. Ridek's fighter spun weakly, sparks trailing from broken engines. Every alarm screamed inside his cockpit, warning of failure. But his eyes searched only for one thing. He found it. The human shuttle, scarred and cracked, but still holding together. It floated helplessly, its lights flickering like a candle in storm winds inside. Arya's hands shook as she tried to steady her systems. Her voice was raw, her breath uneven, but she whispered, "Still alive, still here." Ridek gritted his teeth and forced his fighter closer. Every movement sent pain through his craft, but he would not stop. He sent a signal, sharp and commanding. "Human, hold position, I am bringing you in." Arya blinked in shock, her voice trembling through the comms. You're helping me." Her words were filled with disbelief, as if kindness itself was impossible. Ridek did not answer her question. He simply said, "Do as I say, or you will die." He aligned his fighter with her shuttle, locking the magnetic clamps. The machines groaned, sparks flying, but the connection held slowly, painfully. He pulled her broken ship toward the station. Every second felt like war against gravity, against his failing engines, against himself. But he refused to let go. Inside the shuttle, Arya stared at the control screen. Her heart raced, tears filled her eyes. The same officer who had denied her mercy was now the one saving her life. She whispered to the empty air, "Why? Why me?" But no answer came, only the steady pull of his craft carrying her from death. At last, the massive gates of the alien station loomed ahead, silver and strong. They opened slowly. Other officers saw what was happening. Gasps, whispers, and anger filled the comm channels. "Redek, what have you done?" One voice shouted, "You bring a human inside? This is forbidden." Redek ignored them all, his jaw tightened, his eyes burning with defiance. He forced his damaged craft and the fragile shuttle through the gates. The hangar lit with bright white light as the doors closed behind them. The human was inside, alive, protected, safe for now. The moment his fighter landed, guards rushed forward, their weapons raised, their voices sharp. "Step out, Officer Rydek. Explain yourself immediately." Rydek climbed from his cockpit, his armor scorched, his body trembling. He stood tall, his voice calm but unyielding. "I saved a life," he said simply. The guards turned their weapons toward the human shuttle. Arya stumbled out, weak and pale, clutching the glowing data crystal to her chest. She looked around with wide eyes, surrounded by alien soldiers ready to strike. Fear rose in her throat, but she did not back away. Her voice was soft but steady. "I am not your enemy." The commander of the hangar arrived, his face like stone. He looked at Rydek, then at the human. His voice was cold, sharp. "You broke the code, officer. You risked all for her." Rydek's heart pounded, but he did not flinch. "I did what the code would not. I saved the innocent." The silence that followed was deep. The guards exchanged glances, uncertain. The law was clear, but so was the sight before them. A human who had survived, and an officer who had chosen mercy over order. Arya clutched the crystal tighter, her eyes meeting Rydek's. In them she saw not just the officer who refused her, but the warrior who fought for her. "The shield that stood when no one else would," she whispered, so quietly only he could hear. "Thank you." Rydek turned his gaze to the commander. He knew punishment would come, exile or worse. But for the first time, he felt no fear. He had broken the rules, but he had saved a life. And deep inside, he knew fate had not finished with them yet. Above them, the station's alarms began to sound again. Something greater stirred in the void beyond the gates. The pirates were only the first shadow. A darker storm was coming, and Rydek understood that his choice tonight was only the beginning. The path of mercy was dangerous, but it was now his only path. The hangar lights glared down on the scene. Smoke rose from Rydek's battered fighter, sparks still dripping from its wings. Beside it, the human shuttle lay broken and silent, a fragile shell that had barely survived. Alien guards stood in formation, their weapons aimed, their eyes sharp with suspicion. And between them all stood Arya, the lone human who had defied death. Her legs trembled as she stepped forward, clutching the small crystal tight to her chest. The crystal glowed faint blue, its light pulsing faintly like a beating heart. Her clothes were torn, her face marked by exhaustion, but her spirit still burned. She looked around at the hostel, stares, and whispered to herself, "I must not fall." Rydek moved closer, placing himself slightly in front of her. It was not a conscious choice, it was instinct. He had refused her once, but now he stood as her shield. The guards noticed, their eyes narrowing. To them, it was not protection, it was betrayal. The hangar, commander's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Officer Rydek," he said, slow and heavy. "You broke the code, you endangered this station, and you brought inside a human, a creature forbidden by law." The words echoed across the walls. Redek did not bow, did not lower his head. His voice was steady, cold. I saved her life. The commander's eyes hardened. Her life means nothing compared to the law, he replied. But Arya stepped forward, her voice soft but clear. Maybe not to your law, she said. But to me, it means everything. The guards shifted, their grips tightening on their weapons. Arya's words were dangerous, yet there was truth in them. Her gaze turned to Redek. She spoke with quiet strength. You saved me when no one else would. I owe you my life. Her words carried no fear, only gratitude, and for a moment, even the silence of the hangar seemed to pause. Redek felt something stir inside him, a weight he could not name. He had fought for her without reason, yet now she gave him one. Her trust, fragile but real, was placed in his hands, and he realized that saving her had not been the end. It was only the beginning. The commander stepped, closer, his eyes burning. Do you understand what you've done, officer? He demanded. You've tied your honor to hers, a human's, a race that brings only ruin. Redek's voice rumbled low. I understand, and I will not take it back. Gasps rippled through the hangar. No officer had ever spoken against the code so openly. The commander's face darkened with fury, but before he could speak, the alarms of the station roared again, a warning of new danger, stronger than before. Red lights bathed the hangar as systems blared. Unidentified fleet. Approaching, the announcer's voice echoed. The pirates had not been the only threat. Something larger was moving through the void, something darker. The guards turned, their discipline shaken. The commander barked orders, but his eyes kept darting back to Redek and the human. Arya clutched the crystal tighter, her heart racing. She knew this was not chance, not luck. Her people had died for a reason, and this crystal was part of it. It carried the memory of her colony. But also something more, a secret hidden in its glowing heart, one she barely understood. She looked at Redek, her voice low, urgent. You saved me, but now I must save them, she said. Her words confused him, but her eyes burned with truth. He realized then that her survival carried weight beyond her own life, and fate had placed her path into his for a purpose he could not yet see. The commander noticed the crystal, his eyes narrowing. What are you hiding, human? He demanded. Arya hesitated, fear flashing in her gaze. She could not reveal the secret, not yet, not here. But Redek stepped closer, his voice deep, protective. She owes me her life, and I owe her my word. She is under my guard. The hangar fell into tense silence. No one spoke. No one dared move. The law was clear, yet something greater than law now pulsed in the air. The bond between an alien officer and a human survivor had been forged. It was fragile, it was forbidden, but it was real. The alarms outside grew louder, ships preparing for war. The commander turned away, anger still burning. This is not over, he hissed. Your debt will cost you more than you know. But Arya looked at Redek, her voice quiet but firm. I am alive because of you. I will not forget, whatever comes next. Redek met her eyes, his chest heavy with a strange new weight. It was not duty, not law, not code. It was a bond, sharp as chains but warm as fire. A life debt had been created between them, and in the shadows of war, it would soon change everything. The station shook as the alarm screamed. Red light flashed across the walls, warning of a new enemy at the gates. The surviving pirates had fled, but in their place came something far greater. A fleet, dark and silent, moving with deadly purpose. Through the void, their ships were larger, sharper, glowing with power far beyond raiders. These were not scavengers. These were conquerors. In the command hall, officers rushed to their stations. Screens lit with warnings, numbers flashing in red. The commander's voice roared, all defenses online, prepare for assault. But beneath the noise, his eyes returned again and again to Redek and the human. One had broken the code, The other was the reason for it, and now fate had dragged them into the heart of danger. Arya clutched the glowing crystal close, her breath uneven. She felt the vibration of the fleet's arrival deep in her bones. People had spoken of such ships before in whispers of fear. They were the destroyers of colonies, the devourers of worlds, and her colony had been their latest prey. This crystal was not just memory. It was evidence, a map, a weapon of truth. She turned to Redek, her voice urgent. "They are here because of this," she said, lifting the crystal. "If they take it, they will erase everything, every record of my people, and they will keep killing." Her eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. "This cannot die with me." Redek stared at the crystal, its faint light reflecting in his eyes. It was no longer just about one human, it was about the balance of war. If she was right, then saving her was not disobedience, it was destiny. The law had blinded them, but fate had chosen differently. The Yaborni commander approached, his expression sharp as a blade. "Give me the crystal, human," he ordered. Arya stepped back, her hands trembling but firm. "No," she whispered. "You do not understand. It must be protected." The guards raised, their weapons, tension snapping in the air. But before they could move, Redek stepped between them. His voice thundered, calm but unshakable. "She is under my guard, you will not touch her." Gasps spread through the hall. He had now broken more than rules. He had broken the silence of obedience itself. Every officer stared, unsure if they were witnessing madness or courage. The commander's eyes narrowed with fury. "You choose her over the code? Over your people?" Redek's gaze did not falter. "I choose what is right," he said, his voice like iron. "For too long, we let the code decide who lives and who dies. Today I decide." Arya's heart pounded, her chest heavy with both fear and awe. This alien, once her judge, now stood as her protector, not because of law, not because of duty, but because of choice. And in that choice, she saw the spark of something greater, unity. The station shook harder as the enemy fleet fired its first strike. Shields flared, the walls trembled, systems screamed. War had begun, and there was no more time for debate. Redek turned to Arya, his voice urgent but steady. "What is inside the crystal? What must be done?" Her fingers tightened around it, her voice low. "It carries the paths of their fleets, their hidden bases, their codes of war." Her eyes met his, sharp and filled with fire. "With this, you can stop them. You can save more than just me." Redek felt the weight of destiny press upon him. The code had told him humans were chaos, but fate had brought him the key to order. He realized now that refusing her had been law, but saving her had been purpose. And this purpose was larger than himself, larger than his people, larger than the stars. The commander, still furious, barked orders to seize them. But before the guards could act, another blast struck the station. The hall cracked with sparks, walls shaking, smoke filling the air. In the chaos, Redek grabbed Arya's hand, pulling her toward the escape bays. "If the crystal must be used, then we will use it together," he said. Arya ran beside him, her heart racing. She whispered, "You refused me once, but you saved me when it mattered most." Redek looked at her, his eyes hard but alive. "Fate gave me no choice," he replied. "But today, I make my own." They reached the bay, alarms screaming, ships waiting. Behind them, the commander's voice echoed with rage. "You will bring ruin to us all," he shouted. But Redek only answered in silence, guiding Arya into a fighter. The crystal glowed brighter now, as if responding to their decision. The hangar doors opened, revealing the dark fleet beyond. Arya held the crystal tight. Redek gripped the controls. The past had been law, but the future was choice, and together they flew into the fire, not as alien and human, not as enemies or strangers, but as two lives bound by fate, carrying the key that could change the war.